Hi all, welcome to Data Hub. Today we are going to look into the SQL problem where we can identify the repeated payment details. This question is available on Data Lamia. So in the problem statement it was given, the payment transactions are repeated by accident. It could be due to user error, API failure or the retry error that cause a credit card to be charged twice. And we have the transaction table below and those details are available in the transaction table. We need to identify any payment that is repeated, and this is the assumption given to us to calculate the repeated payment details. So first thing, the first transaction of such payment shouldn't be counted as repeated payment. This means if there are two transactions performed by the merchant with the same credit card for the same amount within the 10 minutes, then there will be only one repeated payment. So in the criteria, first thing, the merchant ID, the credit card ID and the amount should be same. Then after that we need to check the interval between the two transaction timestamp. This should be within 10 minutes. In that case, based on these three columns, we need to order the data based on the transaction timestamp. Then we can check for every transaction, is there any previous transaction available or not. If that transaction is available, then if the interval is within 10 minutes, then we will consider this as a repeated payment. If the interval is beyond 10 minutes, then it's not a repeated payment. Suppose in this example, the first two row, all the three details are same, the merchant ID, credit card ID and amount. But the transaction timestamp, if we check, here it is 12:08 and it's 12. So the timestamp difference is within 10 minutes. So that means it's a repeated payment. But if we compare with the third row, here all the details are same, but the transaction timestamp difference according to the previous transaction, it's like beyond 10 minutes. That means it's not a repeated payment. And in the next scenario, that row number 4 and 6, it's the transaction ID 4 and 6. The merchant ID and the credit card ID is same, but the amount is different. That means this is not a repeated payment. So within this whole table, we just got only one scenario where we can see there is a repeated payment criteria. So in the output, it was written as 1. So to get these details, we need to write a query. First thing, we need to calculate the previous transaction timestamp. So in this case, I am using the lag window function where we can get the previous row's value. So from the transaction table, I am fetching all the columns. After that, based on those columns, I am calculating the previous transaction timestamp. So I am using the lag function on this transaction timestamp column, and we are partitioning this data based on the merchant ID, credit card ID and amount, because these three things should be shared. Then we are ordering the data based on the transaction timestamp. That's why I have taken order by transaction timestamp. Here I have not given anything ascending or descending because it is by default ascending. Then I am calculating this one, previous transaction timestamp. After getting this information, I am just adding all this information inside a temporary table that is called transaction. So then I am going to refer this transaction to get the repeated payment details. So in the repeated payment transaction, I have created one more temporary table where I am referring the above transaction table only. And here I am fetching all the columns, but in the where condition I have given this the transaction timestamp, the current transaction timestamp and the previous row's transaction timestamp, that is the previous transaction timestamp. It should be less than 10. And we are calculating this different based on 10 minutes. That's why I'm extracting, and here extracting the minute from the timestamp details, and here in the where condition we have specified it should be less than 10. So now we have the filtered data. In this table we can get only the repeated transaction details. Now we just need to calculate the count, like how many repeated transaction details are there, because here there is a one-liner answer we need to provide like that. So I'm just referring the repeated transaction details. I'm using the count star. Now I'm going to run this code. So our count is 4. Let me submit this. Okay. So after submitting, it's showing accepted. That means our answer is correct. Thanks all.